Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to your favorite weekly horoscope, this time for October 17th through the 23rd of 2022. My name is Cam White. Thank you guys so much for being here. This week's highlights, we have, this isn't like, these next couple weeks are not going to be like really easy to talk about, simply because there is the mundane astrology, which is happening in the world, right? And then there's the, personal astrology. What I like to do with the show is I want to keep it more personal development focus on like how you can interact with the astrological energy in a positive way that can create much more better circumstances for your life. And the hard part about these next 2 weeks is that the astrology does get pretty rough. Now, I'm not trying to be doom and gloom here, but there's a lot of things that are going to change in the world. And unfortunately, with how this world is set up right now, oftentimes major events that happen in the world will affect you on a day-to-day level. I mean, like, for example, we can you could talk about COVID or Ukraine, but either way, the inflation that created, that's going to be dictating how you make how much money you spend on food, what kind of food that you get. With interest rates going up, some of you might lose your job because of, all of the interest rates going up and everything. Why I'm opening up with this is this week really marks that pivot point. While there are some good things that happen this week and there are things that you can do to really enjoy it, and I'm not trying to be like, oh, this is going to be just bad for everybody, but this is that week that we see that pivot. And 2022 has been a hard year. This week and next week will probably be, arguably next week will probably be the hardest week of the year. And so I say that for you guys to, for one, enjoy this week while it's here, but also to kind of get a little bit of a game face on. This isn't like I don't like to be, it's in the spiritual world and in the astrology world, there's so many, different ways of interpreting things. And the way I look at this is, why I say put your game face on is that if you can really understand what is about to happen and at least kind of prepare, like if you're going to the movie theater and you're expecting to watch like the SpongeBob movie, but then you go in there and it's like Insidious, you might be a little bit freaked out a little bit. The movie we're about to watch is Insidious. And yes, you're about to see some crazy stuff. So when you have that anticipation, it's going to be a lot easier for you to deal and cope with. This week's highlights that we have, number one, we have the sun trining Mars. That's only really important because the sun trining Mars is very significant for the Mars retrograde cycle. We're going to be talking about the hero's journey, but the sun trine Mars is like that part of the movie where it's like, 30 minutes into the movie, 40 minutes into the movie, the hero's doing good, and then right as Mars retrogrades, it's like in the hero's journey, it's like, oh, something bad happens, you have to go backwards on everything. So this is that moment right before things literally get bad with the Mars retrograde. We have Venus trining Mars, which I actually really, really like. We're going to talk about that. We have the Venus Cazimi, which I still have a lot of mixed feelings about, and I'm going to try my best to navigate through them as we go along. But the Sun and Venus enter Scorpio, as it's still Cazimi, which is a really big deal. I don't really see that happen all too often, where a planet goes Cazimi literally in between zodiac signs. And then Saturn stations direct. The beginning of this week is really nice, but then we change everything on Sunday, and it's next Sunday. So the next time you're watching this video from next Sunday, all of next week is really crazy. That's when all of the bigger stuff, quote unquote, happens. And this week's kind of like that grace period before everything, really kind of goes down. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that we've got going on Monday is the moon's going to be making a square to Venus, and it will be trining Neptune. The only other thing that we've got going on is the sun trining Mars. So the biggest thing with this is, now that the moon's at the end degrees of Cancer here, I kind of wrapped up last week focusing a lot on like, all right, what do we really need to take care of? What is really important here? As that moon in Cancer squares Venus in Libra, Venus is still in, she's still pretty much combust, but she's in her chariot. There's some decent parts to this. The hard part about the moon in Cancer in its home sign squaring Venus in Libra in its home sign is the necessity overcomes like the balance, right? Like Venus, like for example, Oh, some of you are gonna get really mad at me saying this right now, but this is a very just a triggering topic. But like the idea of equity, right? So there's equality, and then there's equity. Now you can go into how everyone's trying to make like society equitable, which actually really isn't fair at all. But the idea of equity is like not like, if we want to really look at it in the most fundamental perspective, like think of that stupid graphic I know you guys have seen where it's like there's like a baseball field and there's like a fence and like the tall guy can see over the fence but the short guy can't see over the fence, and they all have blocks that they could stand on, so they give like the tall people give the short guy both of their blocks so he could stand over the fence. That's like equity versus equality, is like everyone gets one little box. I say that because with the moon in Cancer squaring Venus in Libra, in order to facilitate necessity that might throw off like the balance of, I don't want to say equality, but like this moon in Cancer squaring Venus in Libra is like, this is what I need, and it's probably not fair to everyone else. Or maybe what I need isn't fair to, or what I'm receiving isn't fair to what other people are getting. There's some type of reception of, hey, this is what I need to take care of, but the way that it's delivered or the value system is unfair, it's unbalanced. Like moon in Cancer squaring Venus in Libra is like, again, well, and the problem with equity is that it's not fair, like literally by definition. And well, at least your equity is focused on the on outcome, the equality of outcome versus the equality of opportunity. And this is one of those situations where that philosophical dilemma might show up in your personal life. And there's this kind of decision where you have to make where it's like, okay, how do I get my needs met? How do I focus on what I need to take care of without completely unbalancing everything, without completely throwing everything off? Now, this is good. It's the moon in Cancer squaring Venus in Libra. I think there is a way to do that, but that's just the challenge that you're given. And squares don't, this is Venus in her home sign and the moon in its home sign. This isn't bad. Squares just represent challenges, right? And for example, the way I always like to refer to squares is like a football analogy. If you are, it doesn't really matter if it's football, but any sport realistically, but football makes it a little bit easier. If you are, let's say, in high school wanting to try out for the quarterback position, and it's you and 3 other guys or girls or whatever, none of you are not like bad. Like, let's say all of you guys are good quarterbacks, but only one of you is going to really make, first string quarterback. And that's like Libra, Capricorn, Aries, Cancer. Not those signs specifically, but it's like you're at odds with these other challengers. Like Venus and Libra is a good quarterback, Moon and Cancer is a good quarterback, but they're at odds with one another. One of them is first string and the other one's going to be second string, right? So it's not like, people just look at astrology as squares as like, oh my God, it's bad, it's the worst thing ever. It's like, no, it's just challenging. It just represents some type of an obstacle. And if you look at that as bad, well, then guess what? You're going to see it as bad, and then it is going to be bad. And so I would really challenge you guys to really shift your perspectives on these kind of things. But anyway, I'm just rambling at this point. The moon's going to square Venus. Something's going to get a little unbalanced. You really need to focus on what is actually important here. Like, not everything can be completely equal or equitable or whatever, but like what is just good enough. The other thing was, and the sun trines Mars. So the biggest thing here is that sun trining Mars, that is getting us ready for the Mars retrograde. The sun trining Mars is typically like Mars getting ready to station retrograde or getting ready to station direct. And the big thing here, or I should say getting ready or just stationing direct, is when the sun trines Mars again, because that will happen later on in January, which I talk about in my 2023 year ahead horoscope. I know you've watched it. Anyway, the sun trining Mars is I don't know if you guys have felt this, but Mars is like not moving right now. I have felt it because I feel like I'm not doing anything right now. But as the sun trines Mars, there is this alleviation of like, or not even like alleviation. There's this kind of like, I like to use The Incredibles a lot for like the Mars retrograde story, because it is, The Incredibles is like the perfect hero's journey movie. And this is, let me see if I can think about this scene again. This is like, Mr. Incredible wants to be Mr. Incredible one last time, right? So he goes behind his family's back to like go to this island. That's this kind of like, I'm doing everything right, I'm going to be able to do this. But that Mars retrograde, when Mars retrogrades, that's like when he gets caught. And then he's fucked. And then there's this whole, his family's got to get involved. If you haven't watched The Incredibles, I fucking love The Incredibles. I still think it's a great movie. But as Mars goes retrograde, that's that time where it's like, he gets caught and his family has to come save him and all this other stuff that happens. The Sunshine Mars is it's not like one last hurrah, but it is this feeling of like, it's working, I can do this, everything's gonna work out fine, but it's not. And I don't say that to like scare or bring doom and gloom, but this is one of those days of like, Mars is still doing its thing here, but as Mars goes retrograde, you're given that challenge. You're literally going backwards on everything that you just did. So I think this is a really good time to pay attention as to what you're doing. Where is Mars, going to be retrograding in your chart? What is happening in this area that seems to be having some sort of, moment? Pay attention to that moment, because we're going to come back to this here really soon when Mars goes retrograde. This looks like being able to move forward in kind of one sense, or it's like, for example, Sun trining Mars, it's like, I'm doing this, right? I'm going forward, but Mars isn't actually going forward. Think of Mr. Incredible, right? He's like on this plane. He's like, I'm going to go to this island. I'm going to crush it. And then all of a sudden shit hits the fan when he's there. That you are in that moment of like, hey, everything's totally cool and groovy. Nothing can go wrong. You might be surprised about that. So that's the Sunshine Mars. We get to Tuesday, and on Tuesday, the moon is going to ingress into Leo. It will then trine Jupiter, and it will sextile Mercury for pretty much the rest of the day. And then Venus trines Mars. I'm actually personally looking forward to Venus trine Mars. Personally, out of all of the astrological transits that can happen, and there's a lot, my absolute favorite transits are either Mars and Venus opposite each other or Mars and Venus conjunct. In a Mars retrograde cycle, Mars and Venus always go opposite one another. And I don't know, I just love it. It's super sexy and hot. Same thing with like Mars and Venus conjunct. There's just something fun and sexy about it. But anyway, as Venus trines Mars here, Venus is about, again, this value, this connection of like, what are things worth? Where do I value things? Venus is in Libra, where that value is really strong. We're aware of the value. We see the value. I think seeing actually might be a little bit harder to use as an interpretation, because Venus is pretty much combust as shit right here. So I think there is this like urge to, again, connect, bring things together, enjoy, pleasure yourself. Venus is trining Mars, so it's like what you are doing is bringing in that pleasure. It is bringing in that value. I think the hardest part about it is Mars and Gemini. Also, too, Mars and Gemini is very stimulant focused. Like Mars and Gemini wants the stimulation, it wants the action, it needs all the information and the loud music, to do things. But Mars isn't moving forward that much. It's like, have you ever had like a bunch of like coffee or like an energy drink and just there's one of those days where it's not giving you the energy that you need? That's kind of like where Mars is at right now. Venus is trining Mars. The coffee's good. The energy drink's good. It tastes all good. It's fine, but it's not giving you that energy. And I think that's really what a lot of the issue is with this. What I like about Venus trining Mars is our values and what we find pleasurable is totally in alignment with what we're going for with Mars and Gemini, right? It's like we're very clear about what we want. We're very clear about what we value, and we're having a helping hand, or at least if Mars is our action and Venus is what we value, those two, what do you want to call those? Like things in our lives are working together at this point. I think the hardest part is Venus is getting ready to go Cazimi. So we are getting ready to like really shift our value system really fast here. But I think we're starting to identify what that looks like. Hey, what do I actually want? What do I actually value? Venus is in Libra, where there's this like really healthy, I don't want to say debate, but like we're really weighing out our options. Like, what do we want? And Venus is trining Mars and Gemini, where it's like, hey, I'm clear with what I want, but how to get it, I clearly have to make some changes. And this is like a trine, right? This is like, if you are clear about what you want, it will be easier to make those changes. You just have to be honest with yourself. Like when Venus goes into Sagittarius and goes opposite Mars, this will be like our wants and desires are at odds with our actions, right? This is different. This is our wants and our desires totally in alignment with our actions, but our actions are like in this weird state of flux. and Mars is about to go retrograde, I think there's this realization of like, okay, I'm starting to get more and more clear about what I want, but I'm understanding in order to get it, or in order to get it, I need to change something because I'm not actually getting it right now. Like Mars and Gemini is like, okay, I'm tired. I want coffee. I want energy. I drink the coffee, but I'm not getting that energy. That's kind of like what's going on with this. But as the moon goes into Leo too, and again, this is when we actually, let me rewind here. So on Monday, the moon will be at the end degrees of Cancer, and it really ingresses into Leo earlier on Tuesday morning. And that moon will first it enters Leo. You know the Leo stuff, confidence, being center of attention, that kind of fun stuff. But as the moon trines Jupiter, Jupiter is getting ready to go back into Pisces. That's going to happen next week too. There is this sense of like, and again, this is also a waning moon. So this is kind of having that confidence. This is kind of having that, have you ever told yourself, you're like, oh, I don't want that. That's too much for me. I don't actually want that. But then you actually get deep down and you're like, actually, I really do want that. Like you just lie to yourself or you make up a reason as to why you don't deserve to have what you want to have. I think when the moon goes into Leo and it trines Jupiter, there is this kind of internal conversation of like, you know what you want. It's just a matter of how many obstacles do you put in your way of that. Like, some people are totally fine with settling. But I do think that if in your head it is settling for something, you're actually not getting what you want. And that's like repressed desire, which will find itself and manifest itself in other areas of your life. I think on Tuesdays, the moon goes into Leo, trines Jupiter. This is like, you need to really kind of accept what it is that you want. And then after the moon trines Jupiter, it's going to be sextiling Mercury. This is kind of rationalizing it, right? Jupiter is the most ideal. Mercury is the rational side of things. So it's like moon and Leo trining Jupiter. You're kind of clear about what it is that you want. You're not denying it anymore. And as the moon sextiles Mercury, this is kind of rationalizing, okay, what do I have to do to get that? Who do I have to be? Who do I have to talk to? Who do I have to connect to? Again, this is Mercury and Libra. We're still very relationship focused right now, balance focused, justice focused, peace focused, as far as how our rational minds are working or what our plans and our ideas are focused on. So as that moon sextiles Mercury, there is this kind of like, who do I have to work with in order to get what it is that I want? So then we move to Wednesday. On Wednesday, the moon will then square Uranus and go opposite Saturn. Wait, square Uranus? Yeah, square Uranus, go opposite Saturn, and sextile Mars. So let me also say, there's not a lot going on this week. Like we have the Sun and Venus trining Mars, and then that's it. From Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, that's it. Saturday, we get the Cazimi, and Sunday, we get the ingresses, right? So from Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, not too much is happening. Wednesday's probably going to suck. The only reason is the moon will square Uranus to go opposite Saturn, like immediately. Look, Uranus is at 17 Taurus, Saturn's at 18. Moon in Leo is going to square Uranus. Like, again, I feel like I've mentioned this quite a few times before, but Uranus unhinges things. And I think as that moon's in Leo, making that square to Uranus, I think if your emotions are very invested into your ego and your desire, and it's in this way that might not necessarily be healthy, you're probably going to get some issues. I think you're going to get issues no matter what, like whether it's healthy or not. But the moon in Leo, as you bring your desires to focus, I mean, not only desires, but like the moon in Leo is like, what does your heart want? What does your heart want? As that moon squares Uranus, you are going to be given challenges as to like, nothing in this world is free. You have to earn everything. And that's whether that's love, whether that's respect, whether that's money, you need to earn it. In fact, something I kind of really get frustrated with the spiritual world is how you want to manifest everything. How about you just fucking earn it? If you really want to manifest something, put value into the world, create that energy and have it come back to you. Don't just expect shit to just plop on your fucking lap. You got to create that stuff. But as the moon squares Uranus, this will kind of unhinge that. Like the moon in Leo, again, your emotions very connected to your identity, your ego. As it squares Uranus, this could throw you in for a loop. But it squares Uranus and then immediately goes opposite Saturn. Not everyone's going to be on board with what you want. Not everyone's going to be, as we've learned with Saturn and Aquarius, doesn't matter what side of the fence you're on the wrong side, just depending on the situation that it is. And this moon in Leo opposite Saturn and Aquarius is really kind of like, it might be a little bit brutal. if you are someone that still, doesn't like judgment, and I mean, who likes judgment, but like really doesn't like the, crowd and the group thought like oppressing you, this will be a little bit difficult. But this Moon in Leo day is also kind of like, you might just need to put yourself out there and just say what you need to fucking say, but just know that it's going to cause some chaos. Like Moon in Leo, when you kind of say what's on your heart and it's unfiltered, a lot of Leos have this problem, because I know I have this problem. When you say things unfiltered, it's going to make people upset and it is going to shake things up. But if you are, it's kind of like if you're pulling out the Jenga block, the bottom Jenga block, and everything starts to get wobbly, like what else did you expect? Don't expect to pull out the Jenga block and just things to be perfectly still. That doesn't mean it's necessarily going to fall. For example, this is actually a good example, because let's say you're playing Jenga and you pull out the block and everyone's like, what are you doing? Oh my God, don't pull out that block, not that block. And you go, oh my God, everyone's judging me. And like, because that's the Saturn and Aquarius. Everyone's like, what? You're doing that? How could you do that? Just pull out the fucking block that you want to pull out. And if it goes down, it goes down. That's the fucking game. You know what I mean? And then you get to yell Jenga and everyone goes home. But this is one of those days where you might have to pull out that block no one wants you to pull out. And now the moon, after it goes opposite Saturn, is going to be sextiling Mars and Gemini all day. This is all strategy. I think I'm going to actually make a delineation about, I don't know if you guys have noticed this. Mars is like action, and Gemini is literally like games. I want you to think about, in the chess world, the world championship chess player just got caught cheating with Mars square Neptune, Mars and Gemini. The fishing world, I don't know anything about the fishing world, but I swear to God, I'm going to make an episode about this. A guy got caught putting weights in his fishes and like literally robbed millions of dollars out of his like community, which is also like Mars and Gemini squaring Neptune and Pisces of like, I literally play a game of like Mars is hunting. We're talking about Gemini, right? Squaring Mars and Gemini squaring Neptune and Pisces, like deceptive fish. Also in the poker world, there was the big cheating scandal. I don't know what the story is with that, but what was the other thing? There's another Mars square Neptune thing. I mean, the whole Pfizer stuff came out, which I was totally right about, by the way. Get ready. There's a lot of shit coming up in the next few months with all of that stuff. But anyway, what I'm trying to say here is Mars and Gemini is very like, we have to debate this, we have to argue this, we have to fight this. And as that Moon in Leo sextiles Mars and Gemini, let's say you pull that Jenga block and nothing falls, then you get to be like, so what did you guys think? You guys thought it was just going to fall? You didn't trust me? You didn't believe me? Or you pull that out and now everyone else has to think, fuck, what block am I going to pull out if you just pulled out that one block? So I think there's a lot of room for conversation after the fact on Wednesday, a lot of arguing, a lot of debating. But the thing is, on Wednesday, you just kind of have to piss people off. Like, or I shouldn't say that. You don't have to piss people off. You have to do what you have to do, which might involve making other people angry, but fuck them. That's their problem. If they're so upset with you, that's their problem. That has nothing to do with you. So we get to, I meant Thursday. We get to Thursday. The moon will then sextile Venus. The moon will ingress into Virgo, and Venus makes a square to Pluto. So, really, Thursday's not that big of a deal. The moon will sextile Venus, like it's going to be in Leo. As the moon's in Leo, it'll sextile Mars for pretty much the whole day into the morning, and then right after it sextiles Mars in the morning, it'll start to just apply to Venus for most of the morning on Thursday. Looks pretty good to me. I really like Thursday morning. This is like getting your accolades, getting your acknowledgement. People are seeing you. It's kind of like getting a little acknowledgement where it needs to be had. So I really like Thursday as far as compliments and feeling good and love and romance and stuff. But as the moon goes into Virgo, this is where we start to get ourselves organized. Are you guys ready? Like, the last week of October, I have said this so many times, it's almost sickening. The last week of October is very gnarly. Are you guys ready? This is that moon in Virgo, waning moon in Virgo before an eclipse here. You need to get your shit together. What does that look like? For example, and I say this with both sincerity and I say this with just a grain of salt, but like, and I said this before, like last year. I remember last September I brought this up, and I don't like saying this because I think it triggers too many people, but also I do like saying it simply because I think it's important. But like, for example, if there is an emergency, do you have some water? Do you have a first aid kit? Do you have your shit together? Now, I'm not saying like the whole world's going to go to it, because also too, this is my opinion on nuclear war stuff, which also I think we should completely defund Ukraine. I think we're so close to a nuclear war. In fact, there's probably going to be a nuclear bomb that goes off in Ukraine in the next couple weeks, which I completely also disagree with. I don't agree with that, but also I'm not willing to die for Eastern Ukraine. Sorry, I don't give a fuck. But what I will say here is, and this is, and like, if people are like, oh my God, we need to prepare for it. Like, if there's a nuke, if the nukes go off, what are you really going to do? Like, my opinion is don't live in fear. Now, don't be stupid. Have something, have some resources to protect yourself. But like, there's no need to live in fear in any of this stuff. Like, you are, this is where my Christian upbringing comes in, but like, you're a child of God. This is all God's plan. You're not supposed to worry about it. Now, in my opinion, I bring up the whole, like, do you have water? Do you have a first aid kit? Because you just should in general. But as this moon in Virgo goes in, this is a time of organizing your stuff. Get your stuff together. Like, this is a waning moon. We're getting ready for this eclipse. This is an eclipse on the south node. This is a purging eclipse. This is a getting rid of shit eclipse. This is a I'm having a yard sale, I'm throwing away all of this stuff type of eclipse. And this is the moon in Virgo. Go into that closet. Go into your garage. Look at all the fucking shit that you have and say, I need to get this shit together. That's what this is like moon in Virgo. I've got this huge list of things I need to get rid of. It's time to start purging it out. So, and I mean, that's really how we're getting, I mean, that's Thursday. And then after that, we're really, let me bring up Venus square Pluto. Venus square Pluto, I have a lot of mixed feelings about it just because Pluto, we're getting ready for our third Pluto return here in America. It's not looking good, as you can kind of see. For everyone asking if the Fed's going to pivot, the Fed's not going to pivot. I don't know why people think the Fed's going to pivot. They're not pivoting. Venus and Libra squaring Pluto, though, I feel like what we want and what we value and what we desire, we have that opportunity to get it. But with it squaring Pluto, it's like, are you going to allow your fears like get in the way of that? Are you going to let power dynamics get in the way of that? Like, Venus in Libra is very like, I'm going to do things by the rules. I'm going to do things by the law. I'm going to be integral with how I go about that. But Venus in Libra has a lot of like desire and want. And with that square to Pluto, part of it is like wanting something, but the powers that be stopping you from getting it. But I think also a lot of those powers are like, you know, it's so interesting. What's going on currently right now in the world is so interesting to look at because it's like there's so much fear propaganda out there that it's literally like none of this stuff even has to be real. They can just say, oh, there's another virus out there, stay indoors, and a lot of you would listen. A lot of you would behave and listen to your government, even though you would they wouldn't even need to prove it. We still don't even know where this one came from, even though we totally do. It totally came from a lab, which the astrology says, by the way, but that's another conversation. But this Venus square Pluto stuff is like, how much do you let fear get in your way? And the other thing is, this is Pluto, right? We're talking about power. We're talking about fear. Venus is in the superior position here. Like, there is a place to like let fear and let power, I don't want to say control you, but like there's a place for that. And I don't think that this is the place for that. This is not the time to be like, well, this is what I want, but I'm scared. So no, like this is the time to go, you know what? I deserve this. This is what I value. This is what I want. I'm going to do it, even though it challenges the powers that be, even though it challenges my fear, even though it challenges, you know, I mean, Pluto and Capricorn too is just like this power and fear around like tradition and institutions. And you kind of have to challenge that narrative. And I think as Venus squares Pluto in relationships, there'll be power dynamics brought up. You need to bring up what is fair, what's not fair. What's right, what's not right. I don't think this isn't the time to go like Venus and Libra squaring Pluto. Like Pluto and Capricorn is not going to go, oh, Venus and Libra, you're right. These rules aren't actually okay. We should change it. Like that's just not how it works. Like that's like going to like, well, for example, like everyone likes to say that Putin's a war criminal, yet we don't look at America's war crimes that we've committed over the past 100 years. So it's really ridiculous to be like Putin's a war criminal when we literally we killed 1 million Iraqi people for no fucking reason. And we have zero war crime trials, none of that kind of stuff. I'm not saying I'm pro Putin or whatever, but I think you guys get what I'm saying. What I'm trying to sit here and say is no matter, even if it's right, even if it's fair, if when you go to the institutions, they don't give a fuck. So stop going to the people that tell you that they're not going to give you that power and control. Stop going to, that's like going to, like, if you, like, this is a super hardcore analogy, so trigger warning, but like, let's say you're a slave and you go to your slave owner and say, hey, this isn't fair. I want my power. Like, I want my autonomy. They're going to go, no. They're going to go, you know what? You're right. You should get that. And then they're going to send you off and kill you. Because that's just how it works. So, like, here's the thing. You're going to feel that tension in the power. You're going to feel that it's not fair. But this isn't like a day where you just, like, address it. You just do it anyway. Ask for forgiveness rather than for permission is what I would say for this. That's something I've actually been thinking a lot of, and I really like that saying. So it's not going to feel fair, but that's not like, don't go to the authorities that are oppressing you to not be oppressed. They're not going to give you that freedom. Anyway, we get to Friday, moon trines Uranus. That's really it. The only thing I can really say with this is as the moon's here in Virgo, trining Uranus, like, I guess as you get your stuff organized and as you kind of get a little bit more detailed, a more planned, a little bit more calculated, maybe that can give you a little bit more freedom. Maybe that can give you a little bit more room to, you know, work with your values, work with what it is that you want. You know, Uranus and Taurus is, again, Uranus is like liberation, freedom, but also instability. And it's in the sign of like goods and value and property. I think as the moon makes it trine to Uranus, like, for example, in feng shui, I mean, this is a thing in feng shui, but I like to relate it more to tiny houses. Something I really like about, if you haven't gotten into tiny house YouTube yet, it's a fun wormhole to get down. But in the tiny house living situation stuff, what I find the most incredible about it, and I think I always relate this to Jupiter and Virgo, but with the tiny house things, it's like they have 300, or if you just live in New York City, but you have like 300 square feet to work with. How you organize your stuff will depend on how much room you get. Like if you have 300 square feet of stuff, but if you have a queen bed, a big dresser, a big TV, you're not going to have that much room versus if you have a twin bed, you stack things up in the right way. You're going to be able to make so much more space and create so much more value just by organizing things. And that's really what Friday is like, you might be surprised how much more room you can create. Like Step Brothers, there's all this room for activities if you just build a bunk bed. Like if you just put the bed on top of the other one. That's like Friday. I want you to think about the Step Brothers stuff of like, how do you find more room for activities? How do you create more of that room? How do you organize and again, it just depends on where all of this is at in your chart, but how can you organize this area of your life better to where you can create more room and create more value in a certain area? Then we go to Saturday. Here's where it all goes down, or at least this is the beginning of where it all goes down. Number 1, Venus Cazimi. Well, actually, let me go through the list. Venus Cazimi. The moon will square Mars and go opposite Neptune. Mercury also trines Saturn. Oh, I didn't put that in a highlight this week. My bad. That's a highlight for sure. And the moon goes into Libra. Number 1, the thing I would like to bring up is number 1, Venus Cazimi. So this is Venus on the other side of the sun. Venus, since January of this year, has been morning star. There's been this pursuit of something. We've valued something and we've been going after it and going after it. As Venus conjoins the sun on that far side, there's this sort of part of it's like a completion of like obtaining that. But as Venus now starts to move towards the evening star, and Venus being evening star is what we'll deal with until next summer when Venus goes retrograde. But this is that pivot moment of going for something that we want versus getting something that we want. Like morning star Venus is very pursuant versus evening star Venus. Like things come to evening star Venus. The biggest difference here is this is in Libra. This is at 29 Libra. And in fact, the Cazimi will actually continue into Scorpio, which is just, I don't see that often. I don't know how many times that happens. I haven't seen it often enough to like say that, oh, that happens all the time. I don't think it happens really all the time at all. But the thing is here is when it comes to what we value, when it comes to what we desire, and it comes to what we want, there is this clarity that happens. Venus has been combust and burning up. So it's kind of like when you know something needs to change, when you know you want something different, but you can't really put your tongue on it. This is where it clicks and you go, it's a surrender almost. Like it's a surrender. It is an acceptance of like, this is what I want. This is what is. This is what I desire. This is what I'm going after. And this is Venus, right? Like what we desire, what we have wanted has been going through this purging effect as it's been combust. And as it hits that's that dead point of like, I no longer desire this. Now, I don't necessarily look at this as like a clear picture of like, now I just only desire this and this is what I'm going for. Like you kind of have to purge things out first before you can let new things in. And this is that acceptance of like, I don't want this anymore. And in fact, that's about to go into Scorpio. This is a great time to get rid of stuff you don't want anymore. But as Venus goes Cazimi, this is a clarity of, this isn't fair. This isn't balanced. This isn't pleasure. I mean, Venus is all about pleasure. Is this pleasure? Like, are you having fun? And I think as this, transition happens, it is in Libra. And so I do think that this is if you wanted to transition, if you want to get rid of stuff and realize like that you don't value this anymore, this is a peaceful way of transitioning from it. Now, when we get into things going into Scorpio, it's not going to feel good. For example, it's like, let's say you want to get a divorce. It's like right here, it's like, oh, I want to get a divorce. And the divorce is, I'm going to fuck up this word. Amicable? Amicable? What's that word where it's like divorce is like everyone, both parties agree. But then as everything goes into Scorpio, it's like, but then you got to go to court. And then it's going to get a little, like not feel good inside. But I think on Saturday, it's just when you realize what you want. That's just what it is. Hey, you go, I don't know if I want this anymore. I don't know if this is what I want. I don't know if I like this. I don't know if I desire this. Mercury is trining Saturn. This is a very, Mercury trining Saturn is really communicating that truth, communicating that reality. And this is Mercury in Libra, right? Like, this is like reaching out to the other side. This is what's fair. This is what I want. This is what I don't want. And it's trining Saturn in Aquarius. It's like, while there might be this intellectual wall, there might be this heaviness around ideas and communication, it's received at this time. Mercury trining Saturn is a great day to like tell it someone straight. Give it like, this is the truth. This is what is. And that moon is going to be squaring Mars in opposite Neptune. I think for a lot of people, it's going to feel really confusing. Like that moon in Virgo is like, but it needs to be this specific and this way and this way. The moon in Virgo opposite Neptune in Pisces is like, have you ever done acid? And have you ever tried to like count things? Like, don't ever try to like look at very tiny detailed things and try to count them on acid. It's just going to go woo. And you're just going to be like, I don't know what I'm looking at here. That's kind of what's going on here. And I think as the moon in Virgo squaring Mars in Gemini, I think if you're trying to be specific, like this isn't a day of like, this isn't a day to know when to stop. Is probably a good way of saying this. Like, don't just pour out and say everything. Like, keep a couple cards to your chest here. You don't need to show all of your cards. But as that moon squares Mars and it goes opposite Neptune, there is this kind of like feeling a little confused, feeling a little deceived. I mean, Mars is still squaring Neptune. That Mars-Neptune square fucking sucked. I hated that. That was so rough. That was so rough. I did not like Mars square Neptune. And I think this is going to be maybe piercing that veil a little bit more with that moon of like moon in Virgo, kind of detailing and analyzing where you were deceived, where things didn't make sense, where you were confused about stuff. But I think this is just really sitting in that value shift of like, I don't want this anymore. I don't like this. Then we get to Saturday or Sunday. Sun goes into Scorpio, Venus goes into Scorpio, and Saturn stations direct. Guys, this is big. This is starting next Sunday when we watch this video again and we go into next week. Next week is huge. So when everything goes into Scorpio, it's not going to feel good. Sunday's not going to feel good. Sunday is going to feel very, very, very shitty. And I don't say that often. When the sun goes into Scorpio, I mean, it's like everything's dying. Everything's like so far, like in Colorado, like everything's been so orange and beautiful and red. Everything's going to start dying by this point. Venus goes into Scorpio. This is Venus's detriment sign. Venus does not like being in Scorpio. Venus is about beauty and pleasure, and Scorpio is about dead things and blood and, violence. Venus doesn't like that. But as this Cazimi continues, like, look, right here, this says 43, 27, so 27 plus 16 is 30, 43. So it's still, I look funny doing that, but it's still Cazimi at this point. In fact, it's actually just about to wrap it up. So there's this kind of like Venus, Cazimi, and Libra where everything is like, wow, like there is this like full balance point where it's like, well, like, you know how Libra season is like, Libra season, the sun going into Libra is the day is equal to the night, but then that next day is the night is a little bit longer than the day. That's exactly what this feels like. It's like the Venus Cazimi comes in. It's like, whoa, I feel that balance. I feel that peace. This is what's right. This is what's wrong. And then you take that next step forward and it's like a big cliff. It's like a drop off of like, whoa, this is heavy. This is intense. And I really look at this. I mean, Venus is going to head towards the south node here. We're getting ready for an eclipse. This is that dark moon phase before the eclipse. I think there's a lot of anger. I think there's a lot of hurt. I think there's a lot of pain. But here's the thing, guys. Saturn station's direct. Where have you been since Saturn entered 18, I think around March of 2022? It's been going on around March. Since March, Mars has been in shadow, and it's been retrograde. And as Mars station's direct, there's a very clear reality that hits us. I think reality is very clear on Sunday. It is very clear what is happening. It is very clear what has happened. It is very clear what is about to change. But this is that sinking in your chest of like, I have to do this. This is that sinking of your chest going, oh, this is the not fun part. And as Saturn station's direct, I mean, this is really moving forward with discipline, responsibility, reality, truth. And it's Saturn in Aquarius. Like, you know, Saturn in Aquarius has been like, you know, outcast from society. You're on lockdown. Oh, you're not vaccinated. You're not allowed to see your family members or go to a fucking restaurant. It's like there's literally, and when you get to this part of Aquarius, there's this sort of accepting that of like, all right, well, I'm not in there. I'm out here. And there's this kind of swallowing a pill or swallowing the truth of like, this is how the reality is. And Saturn squaring Uranus, by the way, that the I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know if it'll be this day, but during the Scorpio season with Saturn stationing direct, that I guarantee you that that railroad strike will happen. There's no way that doesn't. Like when I heard that got averted, I was like, no fucking way. Like there's no fucking way that's getting averted. If they're about to go on strike, this looks like a rail strike. But then we go to next week, and next week, guys, we have the solar eclipse in Scorpio. That is on Venus. That's not going to feel that good. Mercury trines Mars. Okay. I mean, at least we're able to communicate things. Mercury squares Pluto. Not good. Jupiter goes back into Pisces, which is, I mean, like, I don't know how I calling that good or bad is hard to describe. I think Jupiter going back into Pisces is like some bigger dose of truth is going to hit us. And Mercury enters Scorpio next week and Mars goes retrograde. So we have the Venus Cazimi, Saturn stationing direct, Jupiter retrogress into Pisces, the solar eclipse in Scorpio, Mercury enters Scorpio, and Mars goes retrograde. From this Sunday until next week, there are like boom, 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 big things happening in the astrology. This is a very turbulent time. Where's my final thoughts? Oh, I should have a final thoughts button here somewhere. No. Okay. I had another slide for something and I guess I don't have it. Final thoughts. You know, I think a lot of this week is just kind of like accepting and surrendering to like what you want. Realizing things haven't been fair, realizing things haven't been honest. And I think when we get into the Scorpio stuff, by the time we get to this weekend, I mean, really this whole week is just a build up to Sunday. And then it's like from Sunday to next Sunday is just boom, 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 boom. So a lot of this, if you're watching a movie right now, it's going back to The Incredibles. If you're watching a movie, this is that 5 minutes before everything changes, before it's like this problem occurs, it's like, it's that 5 minutes of things being really good. And then our protagonist has some issue thrown at them. So enjoy this week, but just know that things are changing here anytime really soon. Thank you guys so much. Please support this video and my channel by liking this video. It really does support me. Comment, let me know what your thoughts are below, or just comment for the algorithm if you're real. Check out my Patreon. Check out my mind's a little bit boggled, so I can't plug my stuff right now. My mind's not working. Anyway, This is my plug. Check out my stuff. You guys already know. Anyway, I love and appreciate you guys, and I'll be seeing you guys next week.